Hello, welcome to Progress Theory. My name is Garrett. This video series is pretty much my attempts to document growth and radical change in my life as I'm trying to create it. For anyone who has not watched any of this series, I'll give a very brief description of what rock bottom really was in my life and what I'm trying to build from. Since I was about 12, I'm 26 now, I developed an addiction to pornography that escalated over the course of a decade. Over time, that kind of just became a conglomerative, addictive personality where I compulsively engaged in any sort of pleasure I could get my hand on. And for a long time, I did not really recognize it as a problem. I just pursued pleasure, and I thought that was a good thing. I really enjoyed it. About 5 years ago, I really tried to start building myself into a significantly better person, and in doing so, tried to eliminate a lot of the more problematic behaviors from my life. When I tried to stop engaging in all of the more addictive behaviors, I failed to do so over and over again. At some point, it kind of caused a breakdown for me. I went off the deep end and just completely gave in to the more addictive parts of my personality. I gained a lot of weight. I blew through all my money and racked up a lot of debt. I kind of just destroyed my brain, created a lot of behavioral patterns, a lot of faulty beliefs, and the porn addiction escalated into compulsive sex addiction, in which I was visiting escorts compulsively, both trans and cis female, and that caused a lot of confusion and shame for me. And drove me to the point for about a year where I was in and out of being overtly suicidal and wanting to kill myself. And I always say in these, it's important for me to emphasize that I'm not there anymore. I'm not in that point. The most extreme period was probably bordering on 3 years ago now. So I've grown a lot since then, but I am nowhere near where I want to be. And the growth has felt fairly slow up till this point, and I'm wanting to really start ramping that up. So how I kind of do this up front is I have a spreadsheet I created in which I track all the progress I'm trying to make at this point in time. This month was not nearly as good as last month. That's a good way to say it. Last month was very, very good. So this is this month that I'm looking at. As you can see, percentage-wise, there is a lot more red on here than there was last month. In pretty much every category, last month was exceptional. The most extreme problem I had was just more procrastination than I would have liked to see, which felt like a big deal. And realistically, over the course of time, procrastination is a problem. But that quickly became very low on my list of worries heading into this next month. I'll start with work input. Work input was pretty bad overall. It wasn't horrible. It was not. I've seen it significantly worse than this. But my goal for hours worked was 210. I only worked 154. My goal for procrastination overcome was 50%, and I hit 0%. I gave in to the urge to procrastinate 41 times. Did not succeed at overcoming that once. My goal for hours spent procrastinating was 14. I spent 35 hours procrastinating. This is the first month I've tracked a full month of that. So to some degree, this is the baseline, and I am, I think, less resistant because I'm just starting tracking that, and I just kind of want to get a solid glimpse of where I'm at. But that 253% of my goal in that area is kind of hard to see. And out of my full work days, I only completed 12% when the goal was 30. So overall, that was it was just very, very poor month in that regard. When I break that down, probably 145 of the 154 hours, maybe even 150, was spent at my job. I worked my full-time job. I did that successfully. And I did that well. I still put in a lot of effort. Like when I show up there, I try to go as hard as I can. So what really broke down was my unstructured work time, which is progress theory and studying for the job. And I pretty much did no work in those areas, which progress theory is the ultimate goal. Building that up is all that matters in the long term. And that will never happen if I have this level of input. I mean, this is maybe 5 hours over the course of a month. Over the course of a year, that's 60 hours. Over the course of a decade, 600 hours. That's just, I will never achieve anything at that level of input, which is, it's just because I'm failing right now does not mean I'll fail forever. But that does, it scares me. It causes a lot of anxiety. Revenue was actually pretty good. It was better than I thought it was going to be. That's just a testament to the full-time structured job I'm working is very good, and it's working. And financially, I'm going to be able to set myself up fairly well moving forward indefinitely, which feels very good. I experienced absolute poverty and complete failure with finances for 3 years, and then I experienced ups and downs where I would build up $10,000-$20,000 and then blow through it all 3 times. And there's just been no consistency up until this point in my life with pretty much anything, but specifically finances. And so it does excite me that even when I failed to perform in other areas, I've put myself in a position where I can at least have surety that I'm moving forward financially, or at least I'm not regressing. Positive habits were still pretty fantastic, actually, which gives me a lot of that. It feels very good, and it gives me certainty that the system I'm operating on right now is working, because where this month really went to shit was negative habits, my porn consumption. For 2 months beforehand, last month I had 0 minutes, and the month before last month I had about 20 minutes. And so it had been, and that wasn't, I classify it as porn because I'm trying to be very liberal with what I classify as pornography, but that wasn't actually porn consumption. So it had been a little over 2 months since I'd consumed anything, and I'd grown very attached to that. As much as I tried not to, it's hard for me not to become very excited by and attached to success in that area. And pretty early into this month, on week 2, my bad. On week 2, I gave in for a little bit, for I think 12 minutes there. 5 days into the month, and I kind of pulled it together for a couple days, and then I had just a really bad, stayed up late one night, gave in for over 2 hours, kind of pulled it together for 2 days, did that again, and afterwards largely pulled everything together for like 4 or 5 days. Then I gave in again, and for about a week pretty much was giving into the urge to watch porn every day, and it ended up accumulating into 12.3 hours of porn consumed. I texted 12 escorts, and I gave in to the urge to watch porn 13 times throughout the month, which feels like substantial failure to me. When I compare it to the past, the past 2 months specifically, it feels significant. But even when I compare it to the worst parts of this year so far, that is still a good amount of consumption, more than I'm comfortable with. Over 200% of my goal for the month. And the worst parts of this year were worse than that. It was 28 hours and then 33 hours. And so it has absolutely been worse. But that felt significant. And it felt like it really started to erode my life in a lot of different ways. I think that was the biggest reason for the drastically increased procrastination and the drop in unstructured work time. Because I clung to my positive habits and I clung to my job and I wouldn't let those things falter. But everything else I kind of just gave up on, especially as I kept giving in to the urge and experienced the myriad of negative effects that come with that. I just very quickly built up a strong resistance to constructive behavior and an amplified desire for regressive behavior. And ultimately, I do have to say, I have to remind myself, when I look at this month, it feels very bad compared to the more recent past. But when I compare it to the last 3 years, the average over the last 3 years, the fact that I gave in 13 times and consumed porn for 12 hours and was actively texting escorts, yet I still hit over 90% on every positive habit, which at this point feels significant. There's 6 different things I'm actively doing every day, and I still maintained that. I still maintained my performance at work, and because of that, I still have maintained my financial position. I'm still saving money more than I am spending it. I see it as proof that the system is working because the lows I'm experiencing are a lot higher than they used to be. The lows I used to experience were all out, absolute behavioral breakdown. If this would have occurred 3 years ago, I would have probably watched porn for 50 hours this month and texted over 100 escorts and met up with a few and stopped working entirely and just given up in every positive aspect of my life. And it shows me that I think I really am building a foundation that lasts even when behavioral regression does occur. And I think it's delusional of me to think that that will last forever if I just kept engaging in regressive behavior. Then that structure, that stable positive momentum that I have built would erode over time, and I would probably stop engaging in the positive habits. And if I did that long enough, it would break down entirely, and I would lose every bit of progress I made. But I've built enough that it can weather some regression without collapse, and that is significantly better than it used to be. So I do take pride in that, even though the month as a whole is not something that I'm necessarily proud of. And it's felt very hard. I still feel somewhat scattered, I would say. When I experience failure, especially with pornography, but just in general, when I'm looking at every aspect I'm trying to succeed in general, when I experience failure, I experience almost a mental collapse where every bit of confidence and pride and hope that I built up quickly erodes, and it's replaced with self-doubt and fear and anxiety. And I feel like I have to. This is proof that everything I'm doing isn't working, and I have to fix it. I have to fix it completely and entirely. And it stresses me out to the max. It creates a lot of pressure that I need to take this experience and learn from it in a way that perfectly fixes everything. And I think because of that, it caused a lot of procrastination for me in taking steps forward this month, and I haven't done all of the work that I should have done to really analyze the experience and integrate it well. And it's left me feeling very behind mentally and scattered. And I don't think that I have fully taken the steps to move forward. I've started to, though. And honestly, there are a lot of lessons that I am taking out of this. I'm not going to go over all of them here. Some of them are more personal than others, or I think are less universal, or would be less helpful to anyone watching this. But there's two specifically that I think are probably the most important to take out of this month that I want to talk about. The first is the necessity of immediate analysis and integration following behavioral breakdown. When I say that behavioral breakdown, I mean, I think it's probably a false binary, but categorizing a lot of behaviors into positive and constructive, I try to categorize behavior as a whole into two categories. There's behavior that is uncomfortable and undesirable, but has a exponentially increasing positive and constructive effect. And there's behavior that is pleasurable, stimulating, and enticing, but has a exponentially increasing regressive, destructive effect. And behavioral breakdown, to me, is the combination of a reduction in constructive behavior and a increase in destructive behavior. And so in this case, for me specifically, pornography is the most destructive behavior that I engage in and I still struggle with. So that is what I'm talking about specifically, but I think this can be applied to regressive behavior as a whole. When I engaged, I think the reason that I kept giving in this month is because I would give in to the urge, and I noticed the consumption per urge given into was higher this month than it's been in the past, because I think there was a lot stronger resistance to stopping once I started, because I didn't want to deal with the aftermath. I didn't want to accept the fact that I'd given in and I'd failed and I'd accumulated time, and now I have to take steps in order to properly analyze and integrate the experience and move forward. And I just did not want to accept the fact that I had regressed in any way. And then after the fact, I've tried to break down when it comes to negative behavior specifically. I've tried to break down overcoming negative behavior into three different categories. One is, how do I increase my likelihood of overcoming an urge before I give into it, or of just not acting on an urge? Two, a new category that I'm working on that I hadn't really thought of before is, how do I reduce the consumption in the moment when it's happening? And then three is, after the fact. I think when you feed the desire to engage in regressive behavior, it gets stronger. And so when I consume, I have increased urges to do so again. And I'm far more likely and far more susceptible to re-engaging in that behavior. And the more I do that, the worse it gets, until it snowballs and I enter a binge period. And one of the most important steps to take in order to reduce the likelihood of re-engaging in the negative behavior is analyzing and integrating the experience. To me, what that looks like is analyzing it from looking at all the different triggers, both externally and internally, all the different environmental factors that went into engaging in the behavior, in order to accumulate a deep understanding of what factors, both internally with emotions and externally with just the general environment, what factors leave me or anyone more susceptible to negative behavior. But then identifying lessons of, like, what what part of the system broke down, what didn't work, and how can I change that? What are the steps I need to work on in order to take this experience, derive the lesson from it, incorporate the lesson into my life, and move forward, hopefully a stronger person. And there was such a strong resistance to doing that, because it's not stimulating. And not only is it not stimulating, but it forces me to really makes it so much more real. When I consume porn, the immediate desire afterwards is to jump straight into some other form of escapism, whether it's watch a TV show, play a video game, go watch a movie, go eat junk food. I mean, it used to be drugs. That was such a bad positive feedback loop. Thankfully, that's not really a part of it anymore. But when I feed the desire to escape, it gets stronger. And I immediately want to follow it up with more escape and more escape. And if I do that, I'm just going to watch porn again. It is pretty much a guarantee. And so I need the action that will leave me least susceptible to repeated failure is sitting down, thinking through the experience, thinking through exactly what happened, what are the steps forward, and taking steps to actually integrate that into my life. And I feel sometimes there's a resistance to it because I had a plan already and I have work I want to do. And I tell myself, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to put that work on hold in order to do this. And I'm just like mad that I failed, and I don't want to waste any more time than I've already wasted. And because of that, I end up just giving in again and again and again. And I resist doing the important integration work up front by rationalizing that it's taking away from the work I was supposed to do. But because of that, I end up just not doing any work, integration, or pre-planned, and I waste hours, days, weeks of time. And I found that I kept procrastinating this work. I was doing enough of it to recognize what the steps I needed to take were, but I just kept pushing off. When it came time to do it, I just pushed it off, and I gave in to the resistance. And then I started using that as an excuse to keep consuming, where I would say, like, when the urge hit, the most frequent rationalization that caused me to give in was, well, I haven't done the work yet to really move forward. So, like, what's one more time? And that probably happened for a week to 2 weeks, where I accumulated an extra 7 to 8 hours of consumption utilizing that rationalization. And the reality is every minute of regressive behavior is problematic. Every minute has a destructive effect. And the more it stacks up, the more the exponential part of that regression occurs. And so even when I give in, it's far better to give in for an hour total than 12, or 3 hours total than 12. And the tendency to let a little bit of consumption turn into significantly more causes so much more damage to my life. And that's something I'm going to really try to battle better. And analysis and integration, immediate analysis and integration, putting everything on hold. Every bit of work I was already planning on doing, the positive habits, putting everything on hold, making once negative behavior occurs, analyzing and integrating that experience becomes the top priority and needs to come before everything else, because failure to do so will just cause far more destruction. And the other lesson, I feel like I'm rambling. The other lesson, the other thing that I think I experience more clearly now than I ever have was the identity breakdown that occurred with regressive behavior. I think over the course of 2 months, I was pretty much completing 100% of my positive habits. I was seeing a lot of success with work. I was consuming no pornography. My negative behavior was perfect. And I started as much as I tell myself progress over perfection, failure is okay, it is a core part of the process of growth. There's no point in, or like setbacks do not mean progress is reset. Rationally, I understand all of these things, but I still get very attached to perfection. When perfection is occurring and when success is occurring, I get very attached to it, and my identity starts to build around it. And I was feeling amazing. But then the second I gave in to an urge to engage with compulsive behavior, it's like my identity just broke down entirely. And all of those positive beliefs about myself I'd started to build, and all of those more positive ways of being in the world that I was trying to program into my brain just fell apart. And immediately not immediately, but I quickly regressed back into this identity that is rooted in self-doubt and anxiety and hopelessness and self-hatred and performance-based self-worth. And I think that's one of the biggest parts that I was missing. I think in one of my past videos I described there's a cognitive distortion, I think, that occurs when engaging in regressive behavior, especially behavior that you actively are trying to stop engaging in. Engaging in an addictive behavior that you don't want to be doing creates a lot of negative emotions for most people. Anger, shame, self-hatred, sadness, confusion, fear. It creates a myriad of negative emotions, and those all just conglomerate into this overarching unease and discomfort emotionally. There's usually a lot of faulty regressive thought patterns that occur and that have been built up over time that spike, and re-engaging in the behavior causes them to appear again, and then it reinforces them. And then there is amplified urges. When you give in, there's just an amplified desire for stimulus, but then there's also far more negative experiential circumstances that someone would want to run from, which addictive urges at their core are a desire to escape unwanted circumstances. But the part that I think I was missing from that cognitive distortion, because all of those things come together when I was trying to really think through what happens after I give in. Like, why am I so much more susceptible to giving in again? Why does it feel like I just immediately turn into another person? I think the part I was missing was identity. Like, yes, all of those occur and all of those are very important, but there is a sudden shift in identity that occurs, especially when actively trying to build yourself into another person. And when building a new identity, that happens by taking consistent action that is aligned with the vision of who you want to be and the values that person has. It is that identity grows stronger and stronger as you continuously behaved in a way that is aligned with that ideal self. And in the same way, when you engage in regressive behavior, you erode and you reinforce the old identity that you're trying to get rid of. And there is when I allow my identity to get attached to success and perfection, like perfect performance, I'm so much more susceptible to actual breakdown when inevitable failure does occur. And that breakdown occurs very quickly. Over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, it got to the point where I wasn't even aware of it anymore. I just felt like this was my state. This is a state I'm always in. I was feeling so negative and so anxious and scared and sad and frustrated. And I started all those old beliefs of like, I'm worthless and life is hopeless. I will never get better. I will never figure this out. Started coming in, and I wasn't even aware of them anymore. It just felt like I was so attached to them. I was so incapable of separating from those thoughts and emotions that they just took over. And I think a big part of that is there's a slow regression back into the old identity. And the more regressive behavior occurs, the more that old identity takes over. And I don't know, this is something that I'm going to have to figure out over time. I don't think I have a perfect solution, but the most immediate step, I think, is trying to figure out how to root my identity far more in resiliency than success. Like, obviously success is important, and continuous effort and striving for progress. That's important, and that's worth rooting my identity in. But also rooting my identity in how quickly can I bounce back? How resilient am I to breaking down when failure occurs, both behaviorally or with external circumstances? Because someone who's capable of facing failure or failing themselves behaviorally and then immediately incorporating the experience, learning from it, and moving on without allowing it to really shake them, and who takes just as much pride and joy in how quickly they're able to bounce back as they do in seeing success, I think that is very powerful, especially because the reality is failure is inevitable, especially with someone who wants to grow at a massive rate. Growth occurs by failing and learning from failure. And so rooting identity and resiliency to that, I think, is huge. I think this video has gone on way longer than I wanted it to, and it's felt very scattered, and I think that accurately represents my mental state in making it. As I've said in all these videos, so far I don't think anyone's really watching it. If you are, I appreciate it a lot, and I hope there's something that you're able to get out of it. But they will be changing. I have not put effort into really stepping up with quality on these videos or changing how I'm doing them. And so this is borderline just video journaling at this point. Going into the new year, I'm going to start trying to really step up and build this channel. But if anyone is watching, I do appreciate it a lot. I hope you are finding value in this. I hope it's helping you create a little bit of growth in your life. Until next time.